100 motorcycles roll into a street where nothing ever happens. Engines like thunder. Doors lock. Curtains snap shut. On the third floor, a single mother pulls her daughter away from the window. Because whatever this is, it's here for her. 2 days ago, Naomi Carter had $8 to her name. Her daughter's breakfast money. She spent it on a dying stranger in a gas station parking lot, while everyone else walked away. The attendant told her to leave him. A trucker grabbed her arm. Those people are nothing but trouble. She stayed anyway. Now the trouble has found her street. A leather army standing in perfect rows outside her building. A neighbor already dialing the police. And a man with a gray beard walking straight toward her door, carrying a small wooden box. Inside it, the last thing she ever expected to see again. She counted it twice. Then a third time, because that's what you do when you already know the answer. But you're hoping the numbers will change. They didn't. $8. A 5. 2 ones. 4 quarters. Naomi Carter stood at the kitchen table at 11:47 at night. The overhead light flickering the way it always did when the wind picked up outside. And she counted $8 that was supposed to be Bria's breakfast. That was it. That was all of it. Folded the bills carefully, like they were something precious. Like folding them neatly would somehow make them worth more. They weren't worth more, but she folded them anyway. She walked to the cabinet and opened it. 1 box of cereal. She shook it. Maybe a cup left if she was generous with the counting. Half a carton of milk in the fridge. Enough for Bria. Not enough for 2. She closed the cabinet. Then she opened it again, like something might have appeared while she wasn't looking. Nothing had. She closed it a second time. Her eyes went to the top shelf on the other side of the kitchen, not the cabinet, the open shelf above the radiator. The ceramic owl sat there squat and familiar, a gift from Grandma Etta that she'd kept through every move. Inside it, $40. 1s and 5s she'd been adding to for 2 years, skipping it every time she was tempted. Because the rule was that you didn't touch the emergency money unless it was actually an emergency. She looked at it. Then she looked away. She stood there with her hand still on the cabinet handle and thought about her grandmother. About the way Grandma Etta used to say, "You can always find something to be grateful for, baby, even when it feels like there's nothing left. You just have to look harder some nights than others." Naomi tried. She was grateful for the flickering light, because it meant the electricity was still on. She was grateful for the half carton of milk. She was grateful that Bria was asleep. She took out the small notebook she kept by the window. Green cover, soft, fraying at the corners from 2 years of nightly use. She wrote those 3 things in her careful, slanted handwriting, the way she did every single night, no matter what kind of day it had been. That was the rule. 3 things. Every night. Grandma Etta's rule, passed down like a piece of furniture, worn but solid and not something you threw away. She closed the notebook, set the pen down. Then she went to check on her daughter. Bria slept the way only 6-year-olds can sleep, completely. Wholly. Like the world had simply switched off and she'd switched off with it. 1 arm thrown over the side of the mattress, mouth slightly open. The stuffed elephant, gray, 1 ear lopsided from years of being carried, tucked against her ribs. Naomi watched her breathe, in and out. Even in sleep, sometimes Bria's chest would catch. Slightly. That small hitch that made Naomi's stomach drop every single time, the way stepping off a fur that makes your whole body brace. The doctors called it mild persistent asthma. Naomi called it the thing that kept her awake at 2 a.m., counting money that wasn't there. The inhaler sat on the nightstand. She picked it up, shook it gently. 3 doses, maybe 4. A new one cost $60. She didn't have $60. She had 8. She set the inhaler back down, carefully, quietly. And she stood there a moment longer, just watching Bria breathe before she went back to the kitchen and put on her shoes. She had 2 miles to walk before she could sleep. She walked them every night. Had been walking them for 3 weeks, ever since the car broke down. A belt, the mechanic had said. Not expensive as car repairs go, but not $8 either. So the car sat at the curb, and Naomi walked. Her left shoe had a hole in the sole, near the ball of the foot. On wet nights, she could feel the pavement through it. Tonight was dry, at least. She put her jacket on, checked the lock twice, and she walked. This is what Naomi Carter's life looked like from the outside. 34 years old, single mother, 2 jobs, neither of them enough on their own, but together almost enough, which was the best she could say about it. Mornings, Beacon Laundry on Crescent Street. 8 hours folding other people's clothes, jeans, towels, sheets, tablecloths. The occasional silk blouse she handled like it might shatter. $11 an hour. No benefits. Abernathy from next door watched Bria on school mornings and was there when Bria got home in the afternoons. A retired woman with a crocheting project that never seemed to get finished, and a warmth that Bria had loved from the first day, which was the only thing that mattered. On days when Naomi's shifts ran long or overlapped into evening, she had a second arrangement. Mrs. Tatum, 2 doors down, who watched Bria specifically during those gap hours between school pickup and whenever Naomi could get back. Mrs. Tatum was younger than Mrs. Abernathy, busier but reliable. Had been reliable for 2 years. Ivaning's, Shepherd's Diner on 5th. Buzzing's tables and orders of refilling for and coffee cup for truckers, night shift nurses and old men who sat alone at the counter with their pie and their papers, and tipped exactly 15%. Tips were good some nights. Some nights they were $9 in coins. Wren had worked beside her at Shepherd's for 2 years. 42 years old, gray-streaked hair in a bun that got progressively messier as a shift wore on, like a visual record of how the night was going. The kind of person who noticed things and then said them plainly, without drama, because she had long ago given up on the idea that softening in something made it easier. On Tuesday evening, during their 8 o'clock break, Wren had slid into the booth across from Naomi with 2 cups of coffee and set one down without asking. "You look like you're doing math again. I'm always doing math. Bad math? Is there another kind?" Wren had laughed, which was enough. Sometimes one laugh from the right person was the whole thing. By close, Naomi's tips totaled $23. She added it to the $8.47 she'd had that morning, subtracted the 47 cents she needed for tomorrow's bus fare, and set it in her jacket pocket. Did the remaining math 3 times because hope is a persistent thing even when the numbers are not. $31. She needed at least 23 for Mr. Devaney. Kept those separate in her wallet, which left $8 for Bria's breakfast and whatever they could make stretch for dinner tomorrow. $8. She folded the bills, put them in her wallet next to the 23. Then she started the walk home. Kellner's Gas and Go sat on the corner of Meridian and 5th, right on the route she always walked. Fluorescent lights that buzzed slightly, a hand-painted sign in the window, advertising 2 hot dogs for $1.99, a bulletin board just inside the door, with papers fluttering every time someone came or went. She usually walked past without stopping, but tonight she needed to use the restroom. And Kellner's had one that was usually unlocked after midnight, so she pushed through the door, nodded to the attendant behind the counter, a man in his 30s watching something on his phone with one earbud in, used the restroom, and came back out into the parking lot. That's when she heard it. Not a sound exactly. More like the absence of the right sounds. The particular wrongness of something that should be happening that isn't. She stopped, looked left. And there, at the far edge of the lot, just at the boundary of the fluorescent light, a man was down on one knee beside a motorcycle. Then he wasn't on one knee anymore. He went sideways. And then he was flat on the pavement, and he wasn't moving. Naomi didn't move for 3 full seconds, which doesn't sound like long, but 3 seconds is as long when someone is on the ground. She saw everything in those 3 seconds. The size of him, the black leather vest, the patches across the back, skull logo, top rocker, bottom rocker, Hell's Angels. She'd grown up in cities. She knew what that meant. Or she thought she did. Everyone thought they did. His chest was not moving. She looked at the door. The attendant had come outside now, a cigarette in his hand, squinting across the lot with the expression of a man who has already decided this isn't his problem. "Call 911, Naomi said. Now, he's down. He's not breathing right." The attendant looked at the man, then at her. He took a long drag. "Lady." His voice was flat. "That's a Hell's Angel. You see the vest? Leave it alone. He's not breathingly high. Happens. His lips are turning blue." The attendant looked again, shrugged. "Those guys bring nothing but trouble, trust me. You don't want this." A truck had pulled into the lot while they were talking. A man climbed out, white, maybe 60, a feed store hat, the unhurried walk of someone who had nowhere to be. He saw the scene. He slowed. He looked at the man on the ground, then at Naomi, then back at the man on the ground, and he walked over to Naomi and put one hand on her arm. Not unkind. "Careful, miss," he said quietly. "But look at him. That vest means something. You don't want to get mixed up with those people. You got a kid at home, I'd bet on it. Just walk away from this. It's not yours to fix." Naomi looked at his hand on her arm. Then she looked at the man on the pavement, and something happened in her chest that had nothing to do with logic. She was 12 years old, standing in a kitchen in South Chicago, the phone ringing. Her mother's is changing. Naomi putting her spoon down in her cereal bowl because she could already feel it. Oh, mother's not a word. Grandma Etta. On a sidewalk on West 63rd. She'd been there for 11 minutes before anyone stopped. 11 minutes of people walking past. By the time someone finally called, it was already too late. Naomi had been 12. She'd had to learn early what it cost when people kept walking. She pulled her arm back. "Sir," she said, her voice steady. "A man is dying." The trucker shook his head, muttered something she didn't catch, walked into the store, came back 2 minutes later with a bag of chips, got in his truck, drove away without looking back. The attendant went back inside. Naomi was alone in the parking lot with the man who stopped breathing. She ran, not away, toward. She burst through the door of Kellner's. The attendant looked up from his phone. "You," she said. "Call 911 right now. He is going into cardiac arrest, and if he dies and you didn't call, that is on you. Pick up the phone." Something in her voice, the particular quality of a woman who is not performing urgency but lifting it, made him pick the receiver fee behind the counter. She didn't wait. She scanned the shelves. Aspirin. Third aisle. She grabbed a bottle of water, ran to the counter and put them down. "How much?" $6.50. She pulled the $8 from her wallet. The 3 ones, laid them on the counter. The attendant gave her back $1.50. She did not wait for a receipt. She was already running. Back in the lot, he was still on the ground. On his back now, arms at his sides, the chrome of the motorcycle above him catching the light. His face was gray, not pale, the color of old concrete. His lips had gone from blue to something closer to purple. She dropped to her knees beside him. The pavement was cold through her jeans. "She didn't notice, sir." She put one hand on his shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me? Look at me." His eyes opened, just a sliver. Barely. She'd read it once in a first aid pamphlet at a community center, years ago, because she read everything she could find that was free. Aspirin in a heart attack. You chew it, don't swallow, and you do it fast, before the window closes. She twisted the cap off the aspirin bottle, shook 2 bullets into her palm. "I need you to chew these." She placed them on his tongue carefully, the way you do something you only get one chance at. "Can you do that? Come on, chew." His jaw moved, slowly, like it cost him something real. She held the water bottle to his lips. He took a small sip. She kept her hand on his shoulder and she did not move it. "Help is coming," she said. "You hear me? It's coming. You just have to stay here with me. Can you do that? Stay right here." His hand came up from the pavement, reached out, slow and searching, and wrapped around her wrist. His grip was weak, but it was real. It was there, and it was real, and she held still so he could keep it. In the distance, sirens. Getting closer. The paramedics came in fast, 2 of them, moving with the efficient calm of people who have seen this many times. One of them looked at Naomi immediately. "What did you give him?" 2 aspirin. Chewed. About 3 minutes ago. The paramedic, young, hair pulled back tight, looked at her directly. Smart move. That was the right call. They loaded him onto the stretcher, and that was when one motorcycle came flying into the lot. One bite. Fast. Sideways stop, the kind you only do when you're terrified and speed is all you have left. The rider was off before it stopped rolling. Running. Vest flapping open. Maybe 30. Dark hair. Face completely open with fear. "Hank. Oh God, Hank." He dropped to his knees beside the stretcher as they were lifting it. One of the paramedics said something, and the young man stepped back, barely, not taking his eyes off the older man's face. Then he turned and looked at Naomi. She was still on her knees, still holding the empty aspirin bottle. "You," he said. His voice had that quality of someone trying to process something that doesn't fit anywhere in their understanding of the world. "You helped him. He needed help." He stared at her, like he was trying to figure out what she was. Most people," he said slowly, "see that vest and walk the other way." She stood up. Her knees ached from the pavement. She didn't say anything. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a card, plain white, no address. Just a phone number in small black print in the bottom right corner. Small quaddle logo, a crown with wings. "My name's Theo," he said. "The man on that stretcher is Hank Rourke. He's important. He's going to want to thank you. Please call this number tomorrow." She took the card, looked at it. She planned, in a vague way, to throw it away when she got home. "Who is he?" she asked. Theo looked at her. Something passed across his face, not quite grief, not quite pride. Something that existed in the space between them. Someone who keeps his word, he said. About everything. The ambulance doors closed. The lights came on. It pulled out of the lot and disappeared down Meridian Street. The attendant came back out. Stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Well, he said, I hope you know what you just did. Naomi looked at the $1.50 in her hand. Looked at the patch of pavement where Hank Rourke had been lying 4 minutes ago. I helped someone, she said, and she walked home. She got back at 1:14 a.m. Mrs. Abernathy was on the couch with her crocheting project in her lap, asleep, the television murmuring at low volume. She blinked awake when Naomi came in and said, She went down easy, no fussing. And Naomi said, Thank you, I'll get you something on Friday. And Mrs. Abernathy waved it off the way she always did and shuffled out. Naomi went to Bria's room, stood in the doorway, watched the small chest rise and fall, in, out, steady. Good night. She went to the kitchen, sat at the table. The letter from Mr. Devaney was still there. Second notice typed on his official letterhead, the word eviction appearing twice. She turned it face down because she'd read it enough times to have it memorized. What she needed to know was the number at the bottom, $150. And the date, Friday. 3 days. She had $23 set aside. She needed 127 more before Friday. From tips over 3 shifts, it was possible, barely possible. The kind of possible that required everything to go right and nothing to go wrong, which was the only kind of possible Naomi had operated on for 2 years. She took Theo's card out of her pocket, turned it over. Plain on the back, just the front, the number, the crown, the wings. She should throw it away. She knew nothing about these people, except the vest and the logo and the reputation that came with both. The reputation that made gas station attendants shrug at dying men and truckers drive away with a bag of chips. She should throw it away. She set it on the nightstand instead. Opened her green notebook. 3 things. The paramedic said I did the right thing. Bria's breathing is steady. Mrs. Abernathy came without being called. She closed it, turned off the light, lay in the dark and listens to the city for a long time. Wednesday arrived indifferent and early the way all mornings do. Naomi was up at 5. She poured the last of the cereal into Bria's bowl, cut the last banana in half, 1 half in the bowl, the other wrapped in a paper towel and tucked into her jacket pocket for later. Made the coffee she'd been rationing for a week, measuring the grounds with the careful precision of someone who cannot afford waste. Bria came out in her pajamas, with her hair going in 7 different directions, and the elephant under one arm. She climbed into her chair and looked at the bowl with the thoroughness of a very small person, conducting an important inspection. Then she picked up her spoon. Mommy, you're not eating. I'm not hungry yet. You're always not hungry yet. Naomi smiled. Drink your juice, apple juice diluted with water, had been the quiet arrangement for 2 months. Bria had either not noticed or was too kind to say so. Naomi suspected the latter. Bria was in many ways kinder than any 6-year-old had any right to be. The knock came at 7:14. Mrs. Claudette Beaumont was 67 years old, had lived in the building for 22 years, had opinions about everything, and operated from the Southern Baptist conviction that sharing those opinions constituted an act of love. She was, underneath all of it, a genuinely good woman. Naomi knew that, had always known it. But this morning her face was set in the expression that meant she was about to deliver some love, in a way that would feel like the opposite. Naomi, she said. She'd always pronounced it Naomi, and Naomi had stopped correcting her years ago. I heard what happened last night. Naomi looked at her. Word travels fast. This is a small building. Mrs. Beaumont pulled her cardigan tighter. One of those Hell's Angels men. She said it in 2 distinct pieces with a pause in between. Helped one of those men. He was having a heart attack. Mrs. Beaumont pressed her lips together. You have a child. I know I have a child. Those people. He was dying. Naomi kept her voice level. I couldn't walk away from that. Mrs. Beaumont studied her with the expression of a woman who cared deeply and was expressing it in exactly the wrong way, and sensed it but couldn't stop herself. Your kindness is going to get you hurt one day, she said. I mean that with love. I know you do. But then Mrs. Beaumont said something that made the back of Naomi's neck go still. She mentioned the angle. The specific angle, left side of the motorcycle, not the right corner of the lot closest to the restroom door. Details that were not in any public account of anything, because nothing had been reported yet. Details that required either a camera or a witness. How do you know where I was standing? Naomi asked. Mrs. Beaumont blinked. People were talking. What people? A man called this morning, she said. Early. He said he was from the neighborhood watch, checking on residents after the incident. He described it. What was his name? She didn't know. He hadn't left one. Naomi stood in the doorway and felt something shift behind her ribs. Not fear exactly. Attention. The specific sensation of being observed without knowing by whom or why or from where. Someone had accessed the security footage from Kellner's. Someone had described Naomi's exact position in that parking lot to a neighbor before 7 in the morning, and that someone had not left a name. She thanked Mrs. Beaumont, closed the door, stood with her back against it, and took 3 slow, deliberate breaths. Then she looked at Theo's card on the nightstand. She picked it up, put it in her pocket, did not throw it away. At the laundromat that morning, her hands moved on autopilot. Jeans, towels, sheets, the cream blouse that needed careful handling, while her mind went back and forth over the same ground. The angle, the phone call, the name that wasn't given. At her lunch break, she sat on the delivery bench outside in the thin November sun, took out her phone, and typed a text to the number on the card. This is Naomi Carter. Theo gave me your number last night at Kellner's on Meridian. She read it over, sent it before she could delete it. The reply came in 40 seconds. Naomi, it's Theo. Hank is asking for you. Can you come to Murphy's Diner on 5th at 3 p.m.? Please come. She stared at the screen. She thought about the phone call to Mrs. Beaumont, about the angle, about a man with no name calling before 7. She thought about Bria's inhaler, 3 doses, the $60 she didn't have. She thought about what it cost to stay and what it cost to walk away, and how she'd had learned that lesson at 12 years old and had never been able to unlearn it. She typed back, I'll be there. A Murphy's Diner on 5th was the kind of place that had been there long enough to become part of the neighborhood's actual structure. Red vinyl booths worn soft at the edges, laminated menus, coffee in thick white mugs that had been washed so many times they'd gone slightly gray. The smell of the same coffee burned slightly from sitting too long. That specific and comforting smell of a place that never fully quieted. She walked in at 2:58 and stopped. Every booth, every table. Men and women in black leather vests, big men with gray beards and arms full of ink. Women with silver rings and the steady eyes of people who had been through things, all of them turning to look at her the moment she came through the door. Completely quiet. Theo materialized from the back. Naomi, thank you for coming. He led her through the diner, and something happened that she didn't have words for. Not then. They stood up. One by one as she passed, they rose from their seats, not all at once. Like a wave, slow and deliberate, moving through the room behind her. Some of them nodded. An older man, big as a doorframe with a white beard and a scar along one hand, removed his cap and held it to his chest. She didn't understand what it meant, but something about it settled in her like a weight that was somehow not heavy, like ballast, like something keeping her from tipping over. Hank Rourke in person, sitting up present, alive, was different from Hank Rourke on pavement. He was broad in the way that spoke of a long life of physical work. 62, she would later learn, though he had the particular agelessness of people who have lived hard things and come out the other side carrying them openly rather than hiding them. Gray beard, neat. Eyes the kind of blue that went darker with lack of sleep, and he had not slept. He stood when she came to the booth, slowly. When something he didn't mention, Naomi Carter, he extended his hand. Please sit down. She shook it, sat across from him. He studied the way she had studied the aspirin bottle in the parking lot, taking stock, making sure of something. How are you feeling, she asked. He almost smiled. Doctor says I should be dead, but you're not. But I'm not. He set his hands flat on the table. Because of what you did. She started to say something modest, and he held up one hand gently. Don't, he said. Don't say it was nothing. You spent your last $8. Theo told me. You gave them to a stranger in a vest that most people cross the street to avoid. Don't make it smaller than it was. She looked at her coffee. It wasn't about the money, she said. I know that, he said it quietly. That's precisely why I'm sitting here instead of in a morgue. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a photograph. Slid it across the table, careful and deliberate, the way you handle something you've handled many times but never carelessly. A little girl, 7 years old. Curly hair that went in every direction at once. A wide-open smile that took up most of her face. She was sitting on the back of a motorcycle, feet nowhere near the foot pegs, one hand gripping the handlebar like she owned the whole road. That's Daisy, he said. His voice became something else when he said her name. Careful, like a door you open slowly. My daughter. She died 22 years ago. Leukemia. Naomi looked at the photograph. We had some money, he said. Not a lot, but some. The problem was never the amount. It was the timing. Insurance kept denying the treatment authorizations. We appealed. We appealed the appeals. We filed for hardship exemptions. And while we were doing all of that, he stopped. He didn't finish. I didn't need to. The understanding sat between them without being said. I'm sorry, Naomi said. She meant it from somewhere that didn't have a polite name. He nodded. When she died, I made a decision. Anyone who shows real kindness, not the convenient kind, not the easy kind, but the kind that costs something when you don't have much to spare, I help them. Because that's what Daisy would have wanted. She was 7 years old, and she already understood people better than most adults I've ever known. I slid a folder across the table. The Second Chance Fund, 22 years old. He said it simply, without performance. Or 3,000 medical bills, emergency housing, crisis support. That's what we do. She opened the folder, the letter dead, down with the wings, the same one on Theo's card. And inside, a letter, formal, official. Community Outreach Coordinator, Second Chance Fund, $52,000 per year. Benefits beginning day 1. Including, and she read this line twice, then a third time, then once more to be certain, full prescription coverage. No copays, no deductibles. She read pays, no deductibles. Bria's inhaler every month, without the particular arithmetic of deciding what else to go without. Naomi sat very still. What would the work look like, she asked. Her voice came out steadier than anything happening inside her. Hank leaned forward. You'd find people who need help and make sure they get it. People who are too proud to ask, or too scared, or just too exhausted to keep pushing against systems that weren't designed for them. You'd look them in the eye and actually see them. He paused. You already know how to do it. You showed me that last night. She looked at the letter, salary line, the prescription line. She thought about the cereal box, about Mr. Devaney's letter with its 2 appearances of the word eviction, about the hole in her left shoe, and the 47 cents she kept separate for bus fare. She thought about standing up, about what that would feel like to stand up from under all of it. She picked up the pen he'd set on the table, and then Theo appeared. Moving fast, his face was wrong. He leaned down to Hank's ear, said something quickly, quietly. Hank listened, his expression changed. Not dramatically, but she was watching closely enough to see it shift. Something behind the eyes going from open to careful. He looked at Naomi, closed the folder. Someone, he said slowly, sent a video to our board of directors this morning. A video of you in the parking lot outside Mercy General last night. She frowned. What? Wasn't at Tuesday night, he said after the ambulance left. You were in the lot for a few minutes with Theo. She thought back. Yes, they'd stood and talked. Theo had given her the card. In the video, he said, Theo hands you something. There's no audio. The board is. There are members of our board who are raising questions about whether your presence in that parking lot was calculated. The words landed like something physical. She set the pen down. I didn't take any money from Theo, she said. He returned the $1.50 in change that I left on the pavement. That's all. I know that, Hank said. Then who sent the video? And why? And how did someone know to be in that parking lot with a camera? He held her gaze. That is what I need to find out. In the meantime, the board has asked me to put the offer on hold. She looked at the folder. At the prescription line she had read 4 times. She looked at Hank. She stood up. I understand, she said. She picked up her jacket from the seat beside her. Naomi. He hit her name like a period, a full stop. She looked at him. I believe you, he said. Whatever happens with the board, I need you to know that. I believe you. She nodded once, pressed her lips together for one breath. Then she walked through the diner, past the riders who had stood when she came in, and some of them watched her go, and she kept her head up the way Grandma Etta had taught her. Because you deserve your own dignity, not because the world has earned it from you. Because you have earned it for yourself, even when the door closes before you get through it. Especially then. She walked home in the late afternoon. 2 miles. Cold wind. The hole in her left shoe meeting the pavement in the familiar way. $1.50 in her pocket, and a pen she'd set down before she could use it. She passed Kellner's Gas and Go. She didn't slow, but she looked at the patch of pavement under the fluorescent lights. The place where she had knelt down. Where she had spent $8. Where she had kept her hand stranger's shoulder and said help is coming and meant it. She turned onto her street. The November light was low and amber and a little sad, the way fall light gets when it knows it's running out of time. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, stood outside the door for one moment. Inside, she could hear Mrs. Abernathy's voice, high and cheerful, and Bria's laugh, the loud one, the chest one, the one that came from the whole body. Naomi stood in the hallway and listened to her daughter laugh. In, out, steady. Okay, she thought. Okay, you don't have to know what's coming next. You just have to go through the door. She went through it. Thursday came anyway. That's the thing about hard days. They don't consult you. They don't check whether you're ready. They just arrive, right on schedule, carrying everything they were always going to carry, and they set it down on your kitchen table next to the cereal box and the overdue notice and the $8 problem that was now a $0 problem, and they wait. Naomi was up at 5. Same flickering light, same cabinet. She made Bria's breakfast from what remained, crackers and peanut butter and the banana half she'd saved in her jacket pocket the day before. A little soft now, but still good. She sat across from her daughter and watched her eat, and did not let her face show any of what was moving behind it. Bria ate with the focused seriousness she brought to all important tasks. Crackers first, arranged by size. Then peanut butter off the spoon, which Naomi would normally have redirected. Today she let it go. Today was not a day for small corrections. Mommy, Bria said around the spoon. You're doing the quiet thing. Naomi looked at her. What quiet thing? The one where you're thinking really loud, but not saying it. Naomi put her cough down. I'm just tired, baby. Bria considered this with the thoroughness of someone who suspected it was partially true and partially something else, but was willing to accept the partial truth for now. She went back to her crackers. This was the thing about Bria. 6 years old, and already she knew when to press and when to let a thing rest. Naomi didn't know where she'd learned it. Certainly not from watching her mother, who had never once been able to let a thing rest. She got Bria dressed, braided her hair, found the left shoe under the radiator where it always ended up, packed the backpack, elephant in the front pocket where it lived during school hours, because Bria had decided the elephant needed to come, but also needed its own space, which Naomi found completely reasonable. She walked Bria to the corner and watched her go into the building and stood there an extra moment in the cold before turning back. The day was already waiting. The call from Mrs. Tatum came at 8:47. Naomi was at Beacon Laundry, elbow deep in a cart of damp towels, when the number appeared on her screen. She stepped to the side of the folding table and answered. Mrs. Tatum didn't say hello first, which was already the shape of what was coming. Naomi, she said. Her voice was careful in the way of someone who has rehearsed something and is now discovering the rehearsal wasn't enough. I need to talk to you about this week. Naomi kept her free hand moving, straightening the towels by reflex. What about it? I've been hearing things. About Tuesday night, her voice dropped slightly. My daughter called this morning. She'd seen something online, a post, some comments, and I've got the little ones here during the afternoon hours, and their parents. She stopped. Started again. I can't have anything complicated touching what I do here. You understand. I have to think about the families I work with. Mrs. Tatum. I'm sorry, I really am. He was a man who was dying. Naomi said it clearly, without heat. He was a human being on the ground who needed help. I know. I do know that. But my daughter was very upset. And the parents of the children I watch, they're going to hear things. And Mrs. Tatum. I'm sorry, Naomi. The call ended, stood holding the phone's pile of someone else's towels in front of her. The laundromat humming and spinning on all sides, completely indifferent to what had just happened. Because to the laundromat, nothing had. She put the phone in her pocket, picked up the next towel, folded it along the crease, set it on the pile, picked up the next one. This was the discipline. Not performing fine, just continuing. Because continuing was the only thing that actually worked. By the time her lunch break came, she had worked out the afternoon. Mrs. Abernathy, who watched Bria in the evenings anyway, could extend to the after-school hours. She called from the delivery bench outside, coat pulled tight, the thin November sun doing what it could. Mrs. Abernathy answered on the second ring. Of course, she said, immediately and without qualification. You bring her to me. Don't give it another thought. Naomi said thank you 3 times. She didn't say what for specifically. Mrs. Abernathy didn't ask. She sat for a moment after the call, looking at nothing in particular. Then she pulled Theo's card from her pocket, turned it over once and put it back. A crown, wings, a phone number. She had one more thing to figure out before she could think about any of it: the rent. She laid it out in her head the way she always did. Clean and sequential. Because panic is what happened when you let the numbers blur together. And she could not afford panic. She owed Mr. Devaney $150 by Friday. She had 23 set aside. She needed 127 more in approximately 36 hours. Wednesday night's tips had been $11, a slow night. Thursday night she was scheduled for a full shift at Shepherd's. The truckers were generous and the nurses came in and Gerald at the counter ordered his usual pie. She might clear 30, maybe 35. That left roughly $90 uncovered. She stared at the delivery truck parked in front of her. She thought about Ren. She went back inside and folded towels. The Second Chance Fund's office building sat on Carver Street, between a dry cleaner and an insurance office, in a squat brick building that had the practical modesty of an organization that spent its money on other people rather than itself. A small sign by the door, clean windows, nothing announcing itself. Naomi had looked up the address that morning. She wasn't sure why she'd walked past on her way to catch the bus transfer. She told herself it was a shortcut. It wasn't quite a shortcut. But she walked past and she saw the parking lot at the back. At the far edge, in the last space before the lot gave way to a strip of dead grass, sat a dark blue Ford Taurus. Old enough to have earned its age honestly. Not shabby. Just long used. The way things get when they've been kept up out of necessity, rather than replaced out of convenience. The windows were fogged slightly from the inside, which told her someone was in there. Had been in there for a while. A man sat in the driver's seat, not slumped, straight, back against the seat, hands in his lap, eyes on the middle distance. The posture of someone who had been trained to hold themselves upright, and still did it even when no one was watching. Which told her something. She didn't know yet what. She'd stopped at the corner store already that morning, buying a bottle of water and a wrapped sandwich with the last of her tip money from the night before. The coins she'd sorted from her jacket pocket that morning, 63 cents, and a dime she'd found under the seat cushion. She'd bought 2 sandwiches. She walked to the Taurus. Did not think too carefully about it. Doing something thoughtful while thinking about it too hard had a way of talked her out of the right thing. She set 1 sandwich on the hood. Didn't knock on the window. Didn't announce herself. She walked to the bus stop. Behind her, a car door opened, then closed. She didn't turn around, but she felt it, the small shift in the air that happens when someone pauses over an unexpected thing and doesn't know what to make of it yet. Shepherd's Diner was its Thursday evening self. Controlled noise, short order plates, coffee rings on every surface, the smell of grease and something sweet from the pie case. Ren was working the same section. Ren appeared beside Naomi at the coffee station at 7:15. She looked at Naomi's face for about 4 seconds, which for Ren was a thorough assessment. "Mrs. Tatum dropped you," she said. Naomi poured a coffee. "Yeah, did she say why?" Her daughter saw something online. Ren made a sound that was not quite a word. Then, and the job offer still on hold. Someone sent a video to their board. A clip from Tuesday night in the hospital parking lot made it look like I was taking money from Theo. Ren was quiet for 3 full seconds, which for Ren meant she was genuinely processing something. "Someone framed you," she said, "for saving a man's life. Seems that way." Ren put her own coffee down. "Put it down." "That is," she said finally, "the stupidest thing I have ever heard in 20 years of listening to people's problems in this diner. And I once had a man tell me his neighbor sued him for growing tomatoes that were too red." Naomi almost laughed, which was the whole point. "What are you going to do?" Ren asked. "Keep going." Naomi picked up a coffee pot. "Figure it out." She paused. "I'm about $90 short for rent tomorrow." Ren reached into her apron pocket without a word and pulled out a folded 20. Set it on the counter between them. Naomi looked at it. "Ren, I can't." "It's not a loan," Ren said. "I'm not going to pretend it's a loan." She pushed it closer. "Take it." Naomi picked it up, held it for a moment. "Thank you." Ren picked up the coffee pot. "Table 6. Go." They went back to work. The Thursday's dinner was decent. Truckers came through in 2 waves. The nurses arrived at 8:30, took the corner booth, and left a 22% tip because one of them always convinced the others. And Naomi had learned to recognize her by her laugh. Gerald sat at the counter and ordered the turkey plate and peach pie and tipped exactly 15% to the cent, which was Gerald's way of saying everything was fine. By close, her tips were $31. She counted it at the back table. Added Ren's 20. Added the 23 she'd saved. Total, $74. 76 short. She sat with that for a moment. Then she went home and found an envelope under her door, white, standard size. Her apartment number written on the front in handwriting she didn't recognize. No return address. No name. Inside, two $20 bills, nothing else. She stood in the doorway holding the envelope and tried to place it. Ren would have texted first. Mrs. Abernathy would have knocked and mentioned it 3 times. The money was there, real in her hand, and she had no explanation for it. She thought about the dark blue Taurus, the sandwich on the hood, the car door opening. She couldn't be sure. But she tucked it away, the possibility of it, the shape of that kind of generosity, and put it next to the other things she was keeping track of. 74 plus 40, $114. She was still 36 short. She went to her notebook, opened to a fresh page, did what she always did when the numbers needed to become real. She wrote them down. Every dollar she had, every dollar she owed, every possible source for the gap. She stared at the page. Then she thought of something she'd been avoiding thinking about. She went to her closet, reached to the back of the top shelf, brought down a ceramic jar shaped like an owl, a gift from Grandma Etta, one of the 3 things she'd kept when Etta died. Inside, $40 in small bills, emergency money. She'd been adding to it in 1s and 5s for 2 years, skipping it every time she'd been tempted to use it, because the rule was that you didn't touch the emergency money unless it was actually an emergency. $36 taken from the jar. 4 left. She set those back, replaced the owl on the shelf, $150 on the kitchen table. She counted it twice. Then she put it in an envelope for Mr. Devaney. She sat at the table with the empty feeling that comes after solving the immediate problem and remembering all the ones that remain. The jar was nearly empty. The inhaler was down to 2 doses now. The job offer was on hold, and she didn't know why or who was behind the video or what they wanted. She opened her notebook, 3 things. Ren didn't ask questions, she just helped. Bria ate every bite of dinner. Tomorrow the rent is paid. She closed it, went to bed. She paid Mr. Devaney at 9 a.m. Friday. He counted it at his desk once and said, "You've got until the 15th next month," and she said, "Yes, sir," and she left. Then she did something she hadn't entirely planned. She went to the Second Chance Fund office on Carver Street, not because Hank had invited her, not because she had a meeting scheduled, but because she'd been turning something over since Wednesday afternoon, a question that had started small and had been growing quietly ever since, the way small questions do when they touch something important. The woman at the front desk looked up when Naomi came in. Naomi introduced herself, said she'd been in contact with Hank Rourke, said she was supposed to be coming on as coordinator, and wanted to familiarize herself with the intake process. She kept her voice level and professionally pleasant, the voice she used when she needed people to say yes without overthinking it. The woman hesitated, checked something on her screen. "Mr. Rourke did enter you in the system as pending coordinator. I can give you access to the public-facing intake files." Naomi sat at the small table in the corner, with a stack of folders and a cup of the office coffee, which was terrible. And she started reading. The files were organized by year and then by case number. She started with the most recent and worked backward. Application forms, approval stamps, disbursement records. She was 40 minutes in when she noticed the first one. A family in zip code 47210. Application approved. The stamp was there, dated, signed. But no disbursement record. No payment confirmation. No follow-up note. She set it aside and kept reading. 20 minutes later, another one. Different family. Same zip code. Approved. Nothing after. She pulled more files. Started writing down zip codes in the margin of a scratch paper the desk woman had given her. 47221, 4722, 4728. Again and again in different combinations across different years. She cross-referenced 3 years of files. 61 families with approved applications and no payment records. All of them in those 3 zip codes. She looked at the column she'd almost missed the first time through. A narrow one near the right edge of each form, labeled Administrative Hold. In each of those 61 files, the same code, RV3. She didn't know what RV3 meant, but she knew what it produced. Approved on paper, nothing in practice. Grant money processed on the approval, never disbursed. She'd been in enough underfunded systems to recognize the shape of a quiet wall built inside a legitimate process. She sat back in the hard chair and looked at what she'd written. 47 Tootin, 47202, 47218. She knew those zip codes, had grown up inside their borders, knew what they looked like from the inside. The laundromats and the check-cashing places, and the diners where people worked 2 jobs and came home with $9 in tip coins and made the math work because they had to. She knew without looking them up, but she looked them up anyway on her phone, at the table in the corner of the office that was supposed to become hers. She needed to see the numbers to know she wasn't assuming. She saw the numbers. She was not assuming. She wrote everything down, every case number, every date, every instance of RV3. 5 pages in her notebook, the same notebook with green fraying cover where she wrote her 3 things every night. The same handwriting, just a different kind of counting. Then she called Theo. She told him what she'd found in 4 sentences. Clean. No editorializing, just facts. The silence on his end lasted long enough that she checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. How many files? He said finally. 61 that I found. There may be more in the years I didn't get to. How far back does it go? The oldest I found was 3 years ago. Another pause, longer. Naomi. His voice had gone careful, the way you handle something that might be fragile or might be dangerous, and you're not sure which yet. Don't take those files out of the building. Don't make copies on their machines. Just, I need to call Hank right now. Who set up the code? He didn't answer immediately. There's a man on our board, Aldous. He's been with the fund for 4 years. He overhauled the administrative systems when he came on. Said he was modernizing the intake process. She understood immediately. The language of modernization. The language of efficiency. Language that sounds like help and can be used to build a wall no one looks at closely. Because the word on the door says improvement. Does Hank know? She asked. I'm calling him right now. Tell him I'm still in, she said. Whatever the board decides. Tell him the offer stands, he teased. If he still wants me, I'll see through. A pause. He's going to want to hear that from you directly. Then tell him to call me. She hung up. She looked at the 5 pages in her notebook. Then she stood up, returned the folders to the cart, thanked the woman at the front desk, and walked out into the Friday afternoon. The Taurus was in the back lot. She noticed it as she passed. Same spot, engine off. The man inside not visible through the fogged window this time, but the car was warm. She could tell by the slight shimmer above the hood. She didn't stop, but she thought about the sandwich. The notification started that evening. She was home, Bria doing a drawing at the kitchen table with the focused intensity she brought to art projects. When Naomi's phone began buzzing in a way that meant something had happened online, and it was not good. She looked. A video, posted 3 hours earlier on a local Facebook news page, all over 30,000 views. Growing the caption, local woman allegedly targets charity founder after staged rescue. She pressed play, hospital parking lot, Tuesday night. Grainy, slightly dark, but clear enough. Her standing near Theo's motorcycle. Theo handing her something. The $1.50 and change. Her jacket pocket, an ordinary 2 seconds of nothing. Held in a freeze frame that transformed it into something else entirely. Her face circled in red at the end. No audio, just the image and the implication the image had been designed to carry. She stopped the video, set the phone face down on the table. Okay, she thought. Okay, this is bad. This is the kind of bad that spreads on its own. The kind you can't outrun by being right. Because the image exists and it does its work before the truth can catch up. But it was not. She made herself say this the way you say a thing you need to believe. Firmly and without decoration. It was not true. And the truth existed somewhere, even when no one was looking at it yet, even when the image was at 30,000 views and climbing. The truth was still there, and the question was not whether it existed, but whether she could get to it in time. Bria looked up from her drawing. Mommy, what's wrong with your face? Nothing, baby. Keep drawing. A face does the thing. What thing? The thinking bad thoughts thing. Naomi turned her phone over so Bria couldn't see the screen. It's fine, she said. Show me what you're drawing. Bria held up the paper, a woman on a motorcycle, which she had never seen Naomi do, but which Bria had apparently decided was where things were going. It's you, Bria said. I gave you a helmet. Good thinking, Naomi said, and she kept her face calm for the rest of the evening. Her manager at Shepherd's called at 8:15 on Saturday morning. She let it go to voicemail. Listened to it standing in the kitchen while Bria was still asleep. The message was apologetic in the specific way of someone who has already made a decision and wants to frame it as a conversation. She called back. 3 people called diner to complain, Keith said. Regulars. People I've known for years. I think highly of you, Naomi. You know that. She waited. But I need to ask you to take some time away. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe a little longer, just until... How much notice do I need to give? She said. A pause. What? If I'm to notice, how much? Naomi, you don't have to. I'd like the 2 weeks of notice paid out, she said. You have discretionary funds in the scheduling budget. I've seen the sheet. She kept her voice entirely level. I've worked there for 2 years with no complaints and no absences. This is what I'm asking. A longer pause. I'll have a check ready Monday, he said. Thank you. She hung up. Rin called 9 seconds later. A word apparently traveled as fast inside Shepherders as it did in the building. I heard, Rin said. I quit. Good. That place never deserved you. Rin paused. What are you going to do? Naomi looked at the 5 pages of zip codes in her notebook. I need to talk to Hank, she said, as soon as possible. Then call him. Don't wait, she called. Theo answered. Said Hank wanted to meet her Sunday morning at Murphy's. Said there was movement on the board situation. Said. And this last part he said carefully. The way you say something that has weight. Hank made some calls last night. To people who've been with the fund from the beginning. You need to hear what he found out about Aldous. Naomi said she'd be there. She was making Bria's lunch. Real grilled cheese. Because she'd used part of the chef's tip to buy an actual block of cheese. And small good things mattered. They mattered a lot when she heard it. From the bedroom. The catch. The particular irregular hitch in Bria's breathing that Naomi had learned to distinguish from sleep sounds, from normal sounds, and from the particular frequency that meant something was wrong. She knew it the way she knew her own heartbeat. She was moving before she'd thought about moving. Bedroom. Nightstand. Unholler. She shook it, pressed the canister. The hiss was thin, almost nothing. She shook it again. She pressed it to Bria's lips. Bria, who was already half awake now, eyes wide with the particular focused expression of a child whose body is doing something frightening and who is trying not to show how frightened she is. Here. Breathe in for me. Slow. In. Wheeze did not stop. Naomi shook the inhaler once more. Pressed it. Empty, completely empty. She looked at it in her hand. The owl jar was nearly empty. She had $63 to her name until the shepherd's check arrived Monday. A new inhaler was $60. She could get one. She could get to a pharmacy, and she could get one. But Bria was wheezing now, not severely, but more than the inhaler had fixed. And she was 6 years old, and her chest was working too hard. And a pharmacy inhaler took time she wasn't sure she had. Okay, Naomi said, out loud, to both of them. She picked up her daughter. Bria wrapped both arms around her neck without being asked. Small chest rising and falling too fast, too shallow. Naomi grabbed her own jacket, Bria's blanket, her phone, keys, force of habit, even though there was no car. She went out the door and down the stairs and into the Saturday night, and she started walking. 2 miles to Mercy General Emergency. It was raining. The thin, relentless November kind, not dramatic, just cold and constant and absolutely indifferent to what she was carrying. She walked anyway, one foot, then the other. Bria's face pressed against her shoulder, her breath warm and too quick against Naomi's neck. The left shoe filled with water within the first block. The pavement coming through the hole the way it always did on wet nights. She didn't stop. She counted blocks the way she counted towels at the laundromat. The way she counted tip coins at the back table. The way she counted everything. Automatically. As a way of keeping time. As a way of staying inside the present moment instead of falling into the next one. Block 4. 5. Bree with me? You with me? Still here, Bria said. Her voice was tight but steady. That's my girl. Block 8. She did not think about the video. Did not think about Brent Aldous or 61 Families or Zepeja zip code zods. Did not think about Monday's check or the shepherd's closing or the board meeting that was coming. She thought about the next block. Block 11. The lights of Mercy General appeared through the rain. White and steady, the way hospital lights always are, like they know they need to be visible from a distance. She walked through the automatic doors. The intake desk, Bria's name, asthma inhaler, empty. Those words in that order. They took Bria back within 4 minutes. Naomi sat in a plastic chair in the waiting area. Her clothes were soaking through. Her left shoe was full of water. The waiting room was the particular fluorescent brightness of places that run all night, that never close, that exist outside the rhythm of ordinary time. She sat. She pressed her hands flat on her thighs and looked at the wall and breathed. She was 34 years old. She had no car and no job starting Monday. and she was going to have a difficult conversation with her landlord about what came after the 15th. Her daughter was behind a curtain with a nurse who had kind eyes, and the inhaler that should have lasted 2 more weeks had run out because she couldn't afford to refill it before it was gone. She thought about the green notebook. 3 things. Even now, she tried. Bria is behind that curtain, she thought. Not outside it, in it, with people who know what they're doing. That was 1. She was still searching for the second when the waiting room doors opened, and she looked up. Dark jacket. Canvas, not leather. The straight-backed way of carrying himself that she'd noticed in the parking lot on Carver Street. He looked around the room until he found her, which didn't take long, and he walked over and sat down in the chair beside her, not across from her, beside her. She looked at him. "How did you know where I was?" she said. "Theo called me. He heard from your neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy. He said she was worried and didn't know who else to contact." She looked straight ahead. "You didn't have to come." He was quiet for a moment, long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "The sandwich." She looked at him. "On the hood of my car. Thursday. You didn't knock. You didn't say anything. You didn't make me explain anything or thank you for anything." He stopped. His voice was level, but something moved underneath it, the way deep water moves under a still surface. "You just left it there and walked away." She didn't know what to say to that. "Nobody has done something like that for me since I got out," he said. 8 months. 8 months since I defected from the army, and nobody has." He stopped himself. Let that sentence close on its own. He reached at his jacket. "I'm a veteran," he said. "Army, communications and reconnaissance, 13 years. He said it without preamble, without explanation, just as information she needed in order to understand what came next. He set something on the chair between them, an inhaler. She looked at it. "I went to the plasma center on 9th this afternoon," he said. "They pay same day. I bought it at the CVS on the way here." Naomi picked it up. Her hands were not entirely steady. "Why would you?" He looked at her for the first time directly. He had dark, calm eyes. The kind of calm that isn't emptiness, that is instead the result of having been through the kind of things that burn away everything unnecessary. What remains after that is not nothing. It is something very specific and very quiet. "Because you stopped," he said. When everybody else kept walking, she held the inhaler. Behind the curtain somewhere, her daughter was breathing more easily now. She could feel it the way she always felt Bria's breathing. Across any distance, something had loosened. "Thank you," she said. The words were not enough. They both knew that. She said them anyway because they were what she had. He nodded. They sat together in the fluorescent light. The waiting room moved around them. A man with his arm in a towel, a woman talking quietly on the phone, a child asleep across 2 chairs with a coat over him. The ordinary disasters of a Saturday night. Naomi and Darius sat still inside all of it. And then he said, without preamble, the way he said everything, "I know who filmed that video." She turned to look at him. His eyes were still on the middle distance. That outward-facing attention she'd noticed in the parking lot. The posture of someone who has spent years watching for things that other people didn't know to watch for. "Tuesday night," he said. "The hospital parking lot. I was there. I'd followed the ambulance from Kellner's old habit. I saw what happened in the lot. I wanted to make sure things were okay. I parked on the street side. I was still there when you and Theo were talking." She waited. "There was a man," he said. "Far corner of the lot. He was using a directional recording device. I recognized it because I've used the same model. It's military-grade equipment. You don't buy it at a consumer electronics store." She felt the back of her neck go still. The angle he was standing at, Darius continued, was from the 2nd floor. He was inside the building, looking down through a window. The kind of angle you can't get from the street. You have to be inside, and you have to know which window faces the lot, which means you know the building. Inside the hospital, or inside the fund, she looked at him. "Brent Aldous," she said. He turned to look at her, taking her measure. "You already knew," he said. "I knew about the files," she said, "the zip codes, the money that never got dispersed. I didn't have proof of who." He reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, opened the photos and held it out. A parking lot night, grainy but clear enough. A man in a gray coat at the side of a car, phone to his ear, and at his side the thing she now recognized even in a phone photo at night. "That's Aldous," she said. "I don't know his name," he said it simply. "But you do." She did. She looked at the photo, then at Darius Okafor, who had spent 8 months living in a Ford Taurus in a parking lot on Carver Street. and had spent his last $40 on a plasma donation and to buy her. Walked here in the rain because a woman he didn't know had set a sandwich on his hood without asking for anything. Can you send me that photo? She asked. Already did, he said. She checked her phone. His contact was there. The photo was there. She texted Theo. She wrote, I have something. I need Hank. Sunday morning. Tell him it matters. The reply came while she was still looking at the screen. He'll be there. Murphy's at 9. She put her phone away. She looked at the curtain where Bria was. She thought about the notebook. 3 things. Bria is breathing. Darius Okafor came in from the rain. Sunday morning, someone is going to have to answer for what they've done. She sat up straight. She waited for her daughter. She counted her own breath. In, out, steady. The nurse who brought Bria out was young, maybe 26, with the particular steadiness of someone who had chosen hard work on purpose and had not yet been worn down by it. She was still in the first good years of it. Naomi recognized that. She had been in those years once too. Bria was wrapped in a hospital blanket, the elephant retrieved from the backpack and restored to its proper position under her arm. The breathing mask was off. Her chest moved evenly. She's responding well, the nurse said. The nebulizer treatment did its job. I want to talk to you about getting a refill prescription called in tonight, so you can pick it up first thing. Naomi stood and took Bria from her. Baya's arms went around her neck immediately, instinctive and tight. Mommy, Bria said into her shoulder. I didn't cry. I know, babe, I wanted to, but I didn't. That's very brave. Abaya considered this, or maybe I just forgot, she said honestly. Naomi held her tighter. The nurse went through the discharge instructions. Naomi listened to all of it, asked 2 questions, signed the paperwork. She took the prescription lips, folded it into her jacket pocket next to the card with the crown and wings, which had been there since Tuesday, and which she had touched so many times the edges were beginning to soften. Darius was still in the waiting room when she came out with Bria. He stood when he saw them, looked at Bria. Something in his face shifted. Not sentiment exactly. More like recognition, the look of someone seeing proof of something they had already decided to believe. Baya looked at him with the frank assessment of a 6-year-old meeting a stranger. You're very tall, she said. Yes, he said. Do you know my mom? I'm getting to, he said. Bria accepted this, tucked her face back against Naomi's neck. Naomi looked at Darius over the top of her daughter's head. He nodded once. She nodded back. There wasn't anything else that needed to be said right then. Some things get communicated in the space between words, and that was enough for now. She carried Bria out through the automatic doors. The rain had stopped while they were inside. The pavement was wet and dark, and reflected the hospital lights in long orange streaks. The air smelled clean the way it does after rain in November, cold and particular, like something reset. She walked home. Bria fell asleep against her shoulder on block 3 and stayed that way for the full 2 miles, which was how Naomi knew she was genuinely all right. Her daughter could not sleep if something was still wrong. That was the reliable thing about Bria. She slept completely or she didn't sleep at all, in, out, steady and warm against her neck. Naomi walked. She put Bria to bed at 3:14. The usual moment, watched the small chest in, out, even. Good, she went to the kitchen, did not make coffee. Sat at the table in the dark for a while, with her hands around nothing, just the quiet of the apartment, which was a specific kind of quiet she had learned to read, or at least some people read weather was it. Tonight it was not the pressing kind. It was the kind after something has passed. She turned on the lamp over the table, low light, enough. She opened the green notebook, found a fresh page, sat for a moment looking at the blank lines, then she wrote, not 3 things, more. She wrote until the page was full and kept going on the next one. She wrote about the waiting room and the nurse with the steady eyes, and Bria saying, I didn't cry. She wrote about Darius in the chair beside her and the photo on his phone and the way he'd said because you stopped when everybody else kept walking. She wrote about the 61 families and the zip codes and the 5 pages in her handwriting and what they added up to. She wrote, someone built a wall inside a house that was supposed to have no walls. She wrote, tomorrow I'm going to help knock it down. She closed the notebook. She thought about what Wren had said 2 nights ago. Not the thing about table 6 or the thing about Keith. The other thing, the one Wren had said quietly at the end of a shift when there was no one else around to hear it. The thing was this. Naomi had mentioned offhand that she was afraid of what Bria would think someday. of looking back at this time and seeing her mother bent under the weight of it. And Ren had said, "That little girl is going to look back and see a woman who didn't quit. That's what she's going to see. Make sure it's what happened." Iomi looked at the phone on the table. She thought about calling Hank. Too early. It was 3 in the morning, and she had a meeting with him in 6 hours, and she did not need to call him now. She thought about what she was going to say when she got there. And she knew what she was going to say. She'd known since the parking lot, since the plastic chair, since Darius had put the photo on the seat between them and said, "You already knew." She stood up, put on her jacket over her damp clothes, went to check on Bria one more time. Still breathing, still steady, she went to bed. Murphy's at 9 on a Sunday was its quietest version of itself. The breakfast crowd, older, unhurried. Coffee refilled without asking. The smell of the same burned-edge coffee and something sweet from the pie case, a smell she was starting to associate with things that mattered. Hank was already there, corner booth, flannel shirt, no vest, the face of a man who had also not slept, and who had spent his wakeful hours differently than she'd spent hers. His had the particular look of someone who has been taking apart something he built with his own hands and finding inside it something that should not be there. Theo sat across from him, coffee untouched, hands on the table. Naomi slid into the booth. She put her phone down, the photo of Aldous already on the screen. She put the 5 pages of zip codes beside it, folded in thirds. She put a single page she'd typed on her phone at 4 in the morning and printed at the library before it opened. The overnight self-print kiosk, 35 cents, summarizing everything. She did not say good morning. She said, "Brent Aldous has been redirecting grant funds for 3 years using an administrative hold designated RV3. It's applied to every application from zip codes 47202 to 4720. The families in those zip codes receive approval stamps, so the matching grant mechanism triggers and the money comes into the fund. But the disbursements never go out. Aldous controls the payment authorization queue." She pushed the phone forward. "That photograph was taken Tuesday night, Molly, in the parking lot outside Mercy General. The man holding the recording equipment is Aldous. My source is a 13-year Army reconnaissance veteran who used the same model of equipment in the field and recognized it on sight. The angle of the shot is from the 2nd floor of the hospital building, which means Aldous was inside, which means he knew where Theo and I would be and when." She set the 1-page summary in front of Hank. 61 families, she said. "Those are the ones I found in the files I had access to. There may be more in the years before I was able to look." Hank looked at the photograph. He looked at it for a long time. Long enough that Theo glanced at him once and then looked away. When Hank looked up, his eyes were very clear. The kind of clear that comes after the grief has moved through and what remains is just the decision. 1 million, Theo said quietly. "That's what we've been able to trace in the past 2 days. Cross-referenced against the grant receipts." Hank was quiet. "He built it in 4 years, Naomi said. Not all at once. Small enough in any given quarter to look like variance, big enough over time to matter." Hank looked at her. "Daisy would have been 29 this year," he said. "She waited. I started this fund because I couldn't save her. I said it without self-pity. As a fact stated plainly, the way you state things you've said to yourself, so many times they've become something other than painful. They've become just true. The system was too slow and she was too sick, and the money was almost there but almost isn't enough. So I built something so that almost would never be the reason again." He looked at the zip codes. "And someone used it to do the same thing to other people's children." The words sat on the table between them. Iomi said, "Then we fix it. That's what we do now." Hank looked at her for a moment that was slightly longer than a regular moment. "Are you still in?" he said. She thought about the owl jar with $4 left in it, about Mr. Devaney and the 15th, about 61 families who had been approved on paper and received nothing, about Bria sleeping in the blanket from Mercy General with the elephant against her ribs. She said, "I was always in." He nodded. Then he picked up his phone. She watched him dial, watched him wait. Then he said 3 words into the phone that she couldn't hear clearly, but she heard the tone of them. "Get everyone together." He put the phone down and looked at Theo. "Call Patricia first," he said. "Then James. Then everyone else." Theo was already dialing. Naomi sat back in the red vinyl booth and drank her coffee, which had gone slightly gray in the thick white mug, and looked out the window at the Sunday morning street. People walking dogs. A man sweeping his front step. A woman with a stroller moving at the unhurried pace of someone who has nowhere to be. The ordinary world going on. She was part of it. She had always been part of it. She was about to make sure that 61 families were too. The Second Chance Fund conference room was on the second floor of the Carver Street building. Long table, 12 chairs, a window overlooking the back lot, where the dark blue Taurus sat at the far end. Naomi noticed it when she came in, said nothing. The board filed in over 20 minutes. Kind of Hank's people. The ones who had built the thing with their hands, who had knocked on doors in winter and meant every bit of it. They nodded at Naomi. Some held her gaze in the way that meant, I've heard what you found and I'm listening. 3 others arranged themselves slightly apart. Aldis's people, she could tell by the angle. Aldis came in last. Gray suit, careful grooming. The face of a man who had practiced being trusted for so long, it had become indistinguishable from the real thing. He saw Naomi. Something crossed his face. Fast. Gone. Set his hands flat on the table. Looked at Hank with patience. Hank, he said. An emergency Sunday meeting is... He smiled. A little theatrical, isn't it? We have a situation, Hank said. Flat. Even. Aldis looked at Naomi. I think we need to address the optics of having someone under public scrutiny present during a board. Hank put his hand up. Palm out. Aldis stopped. Naomi opened the folder. Pushed copies to the center of the table. Then she spoke clearly, without performance, because this was not the moment for emotion. This was the moment for facts in the right order. She went through everything, the RV3 code, the 3 zip codes. 61 families approved on paper, never paid. The grant matching mechanism that brought money in for approvals that were never fulfilled. The amounts, the dates. She did not rush. She let the facts do what facts do when there are enough of them, and they are true. Patricia, with the funds since year 3, leaned slightly forwards as Naomi spoke. Aldis's 2 allies exchanged a look. Aldis himself did not move, waiting. When she finished, silence. Then Aldis leaned back, crossed his hands, smiled. This is a creative interpretation of what is in fact a well-documented administrative backlog. Every nonprofit of our size has processing delays. What Ms. Carter is describing is a pattern that he's going to bury it in language. She knew it before he finished. And then the door opened. Darius Okafor walked in. Canvas jacket, army veteran cap op. He stood in the doorway one moment, taking in the room the way she imagined he'd taken in many rooms quickly, completely. He walked to the center of the table. My name is Darius Okafor, Staff Sergeant, United States Army, Communications and Reconnaissance, retired, 13 years of service. He set his phone on the table, pressed play. The recording quality was what it was. A phone in a jacket pocket, ambient noise. But voices carry when people believe they're unheard. Aldis's voice, unmistakable. Make sure the angle gets her face clearly. A pause. We don't need enough for court. We just need enough for the board. Reasonable doubt, that's all. A second voice, muffled. What about Hank? Aldis. Hank is sentimental. Show him a sympathetic story and he'll respond to it. The woman is convenient. Use her and move on. The recording ended. Complete silence. Darius picked up his phone, stepped back. Aldis's hands were no longer flat on the table. Patricia leaned forward. Her voice was quiet and clear. Brent, I need you to tell me that isn't your voice. Aldis said nothing. For the first time, his face was not arranged into anything. Just a face. Which was more damning than anything he could have said. Patricia looked at Hank. Call the attorney, she said. What followed was not dramatic. Just the grinding machinery of accountability. Phone calls. A lawyer on a Sunday, board members in the hallway speaking quietly. Someone on the line with the State Oversight Office. Aldis sat until the attorney arrived. Did not speak again.
Naomi sat near the window. Darius stood against the wall. Hank came and sat beside her when the attorney took over the room. He was quiet a moment. Then,
I should have been watching closer. You built something real, she said. Someone decided to take from it. That's his failure, not yours. He looked at his hands. My daughter died because people who should have helped didn't. And I let a man use her name to do the same thing to other people's children for 3 years. Then we fix it, Naomi said. That's what we do now. He was quiet. Are you still in? She thought about that jar, about Braya's code, about 61 families. I was always in, she said. He nodded, the way people nod when they've confirmed something they already knew. She heard them before she saw them. Low thunder. The ground vibrating from somewhere underneath. She was making Bria's breakfast. Real eggs, real toast. When the sound built from the direction of the highway. Faya ran to the window. Mommy, come look. The street was filling with motorcycles, one after another, chrome catching the early light, parked into two long rows with the order city particularly people who had planned this down to the last space. More than 100. Raya pressed both hands to the glass. There are so many, she whispered. Yeah, baby. There are. What? Naomi watched the riders dismount, remove their helmets, and simply stand there in the cold morning air, waiting. "Huz, we're going to go find out," she said. She signed the contract on Monday afternoon, hours after the board vote, while the street outside the Carver Street office was still settling back into its ordinary shape. Hank had called her at noon, said it was done, said come in. Theo witnessed it. She used the logo pen, the one with the crown and wings on the clip, and wrote her name in her careful, slanted handwriting. The same handwriting that had filled 5 pages of zip codes in a hospital waiting room 4 days before. The board finalized Aldis's removal 3 days later. The state oversight investigation opened formally the day after that. The video traced back to the account he'd created. The local news page issued a correction, buried, 2 paragraphs, but permanent. Hank sent a letter to every family in the 3 zip codes. It did not make excuses. Apologized without qualification. It said, "Your application is being processed. You will hear from us within 2 weeks." 61 families. Naomi made 61 phone calls. Some didn't answer. Some were skeptical. Fair, she thought each time, completely fair, you earned that skepticism. But some went quiet at the end in the way of people for whom good news had become unfamiliar. One woman says, "I stopped believing anyone was going to call." Naomi said, "I know. I'm sorry it took this long." A pause. "But you called," the woman said. "Yeah," Naomi said, "we called." The street was different by the time the truck finished unloading. Not loud. Not a party. Just different. Mrs. Beaumont directing box traffic in the hallway with absolute authority. Raymond from the 3rd floor, 22 years of construction experience. It turned out, carrying more furniture than anyone else without being asked twice. Gerald at the stoop with 2 thermoses of coffee, which was his way of being part of something without making a speech about it. Hank found her on the sidewalk when the truck was half empty. Small wooden box in his hands, worn at the corners. He held it out. She opened it. 3 bills, 4 coins, laid flat under clear laminate, preserved 5, 2 ones, 4 quarters. She recognized the fold in the 5. The small crease she'd made herself at the kitchen table at 47 Tuesday night. Counting for the 3rd time. Her own hands had made that fold. Theo went back, Hank said. The night of the ambulance. He went back to Kellner's and asked the attendant for the specific bills. The attendant gave them. Didn't ask for anything in exchange. Under the bills, a folded note. Hank's handwriting, large and careful. Daisy died because we were $8 short at the wrong moment. Bria will grow up knowing that her $8 kept door open for 61 families who would have had nothing. I am building that door into a house. Your name goes on it, not because I owe you. Because Daisy would have wanted you to know her name too. Naomi read it. Read it again. She didn't cry in the way that loses you. She cried in the way that returns you. To yourself, to the ground, to where you actually are. Bria appeared beside her and wrapped both arms around her waist without being asked. Happy tears, she said. The best kind, Naomi said. A year later, a Carter house opened on a Saturday in October. Corner of Meridian and 47th, 3 blocks from Kellner's. Big windows. A mural outside, a woman kneeling on pavement, hands steady, face forward. Make her look tired, Naomi had told the artist. Like she almost kept walking, but she didn't. Bria cut the ribbon with plastic safety scissors. She held up both pieces like she'd won something important. Inside, job training, a food bank, a medical clinic, an after-school room with a wall for kids' drawings. 51 people on opening day. All 51 left with something. Darius ran the Veterans Outreach Program. Coffee cup on his desk. World's okayest soldier. Bria's selection presented with ceremony. Used every day. Mrs. Beaumont volunteered Tuesdays and Thursdays. Organized the food bank with military precision. Everyone's slightly afraid of her, exactly what the place needed. The attendant from Kellner's came to the opening. Stood near the back by the mural for a long time. Naomi went to him. I told you to walk away, he said. Yeah, I was wrong. You were scared. I was both. He looked at the mural. That was your last $8 and you didn't even think about it. I thought about it, she said. 3 seconds. He shook his head. That's not hesitating. That's just being human. You went anyway. She held out her hand. He shook it. The next time you see someone who needs help, she said. He nodded before she finished. She believed him. 6 weeks after the opening, Walking home from a late meeting, she saw as a young woman on the front steps of an apartment building on 5th and Landry. Maybe 22, arms around her knees, phone dead, shoulders in the shape of someone who had finished crying and was now just in the quiet after.
Naomi stopped.
3 seconds.
Then she sat down beside her, not above, beside.
The young woman looked up, startled. "I'm not going anywhere," Naomi said. "Tell me what you need. I have time." Something in the young woman's face changed, and she started talking. Naomi listened. This is what it looks like. An ordinary Wednesday night in October, a streetlight on 5th and Landry. Hot a parking lot. Not a crisis. Just two people on a stoop, one of having a hard night and one of them who decided to stop.
She got home at 9:20, Bria asleep, the elephant in place, breathing steady. She sat at the solid table, made tea.
Opened the green notebook, her third one now. Found a fresh page. 3 things. Carter House is open. A young woman on 5th Street told me her name. Bria is breathing. She closed the notebook, looked at the shelf, the small wooden box, crown and wings on the lid. $8, 3 bills, 4 coins, laminated, preserved, which was nothing, which was the whole story. Which is what it looks like when one person stops. She turned off the kitchen light. The apartment settled into the kind of quiet that doesn't press. The kind that holds you. The kind you earn.